Hello and welcome to Gurobi Days Digital Academic. I'm Lindsay Monchinari and I lead the academic program at Gurobi Optimization. Thank you for joining our live panel today where we're going to discuss how optimization can help launch your career. Dr. Vijay Mehrotra is moderating our panel today and he's going to try to save a few minutes for audience questions at the end of the session. Please be sure to use the Q&A module of Zoom rather than the chat window to ask any questions you might have throughout the panel. Thanks so much. And over to you, Vijay, to help kick off this exciting conversation.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Lindsay. We've got a terrific group of panelists here today, and my job is to stay out of the way as best I can. I'm going to start by asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves. Dayana, let's start with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. My name is Dayana and I lead a group of scientists at Delta Airlines, where we solve the hardest problems for the airline and really focus on the operation. So anything that's going to make our operation more reliable, better for our customers, we build models for them for the operations so that they can make better decisions.
Excellent. Dayana, I forgot to ask, could you tell the audience a little bit about your academic background as well?
Yeah, sure. So I went to the University of Central Florida a long time ago, where I got my PhD, bachelor's, master's in industrial engineering. I started out as wanting to be in engineering. I didn't know exactly what kind of engineering I wanted to do back when I started my college journey. But I knew I wanted to do something that had to do with people. So I didn't want to be, stuck in an office all day, working in front of a computer all day. So I went the industrial engineering route. So I got all of those degrees in industrial engineering. Somewhere along the way, I found my way into operations research, simulation, via a undergraduate project a professor had in UCF. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here.
Fabulous. Thank you. Since Dayana is in Atlanta, so we'll stay in the Southeast. And Warren, just tell us a little bit about your academic background and about the group that you work in now.
Sure. So I originally thought that I'd spend my career in the Army. I earned my bachelor's in math from the United States Military Academy back in 1989 and spent a few years serving in the military. I then left active duty in the fall of 1992 and started my PhD at Georgia Tech because I knew I wanted to use math to solve some real world problems. What might be a little different about my journey is that in 1992, I chose to do my doctoral research in the area of reinforcement learning for robotic control. It wasn't a very popular research area at the time, and frankly, neither was the field of machine learning, at least in Atlanta. So I knew pretty early on that in my PhD studies that I wanted to go into industry. The best option for me at the time was to focus on mixed integer programming problems, say for Lucent Technologies, and manage the allocation of raw materials and orders and scheduling the jobs on the floor. So that was my first job out of my PhD. Spent 5 years there. It wasn't until I got to UPS that I started infusing machine learning and optimization. So that's what's a little different. I went from machine learning to optimization and back to doing a combination of both.
Excellent. Can you say, I was just going to say, can you say a word about your current role at Best Buy as well?
Yeah. So right now I'm currently VP and Chief Data Scientist for Best Buy. The company is headquartered in Minnesota, but I'm based out of Atlanta, and I'm helping build out our technology and analytics hub here. I lead a team of about 45 data scientists with skills from statistics to forecasting, machine learning, optimization, simulation. And we're part of a bigger group that has decision scientists, data scientists, and reporting and visualization experts. We fall into the technology organization called Digital Analytics and Technology. And we coordinate the efforts of using analytics across the enterprise. And we basically solve any type of business problem that requires complex mathematical algorithms. And it can range from resource allocation, in-home repair scheduling, mixed media optimization, labor forecasting, things like that.
Excellent. Since Warren mentioned my home state of Minnesota, I'm going to turn it over to Alison, who's based in Minnesota, to introduce herself, a little bit about your academic background and about the group that you work in now.
Great, thank you. Yep, so I'm currently in Minnesota. So to the person in the chat who asked, I do like the cold. I'm typically out of Texas, so I can actually tolerate the heat on occasion. As a bit of an oddball for this panel, I'm actually a chemical engineer. I did my undergrad at the University of Minnesota in chemical engineering, and then went on to chemical engineering PhD work at Carnegie Mellon. And we were a set of grad students that worked in kind of the intersection of optimization and chemical engineering. There's a lot of chemical industry that has really sophisticated supply chains and really cool nonlinear systems that can be solved. So there's a cool niche for us chemical engineers that do optimization. My PhD work was kind of a little bit more leaning toward what Warren talked about in some cases. I did a lot of applying bread and butter optimization techniques to more traditional machine learning methods. And similar to Warren, I always did really want to solve problems using math. I happened to focus in chemical engineering, and when I learned about optimization, that really just kind of opened up a whole new world for me. I did start out in the chemical industry, so I got to really use both my chemical engineering skills and optimization skills at ExxonMobil. But currently, I am the optimization support manager, or an optimization support manager of the Gurobi expert team. We're a team of 16 or so PhD level optimizers with backgrounds in math and OR and industrial engineering and data science and chemical engineering. We're around the globe. And for our commercial licenses, we actually, we offer free access to the Gurobi expert team. So we kind of think of ourselves as part of the product that you get when you purchase Gurobi. And our goal is to help you become Gurobi experts through a number of educational opportunities and discussions. But on the way to becoming an expert, we can kind of help you out there too. So this might mean helping you with your particular constraint in writing that math formulation, or even translating that math formulation into Gurobi's API. We also get a kick out of helping you squeeze a little bit more performance out of Gurobi. There are actually over 100 Gurobi parameters. They turn on or off different parts of the algorithm, and they really do affect performance. And this can lead to really almost a nauseating number of combinations if you're less familiar with what parts of the algorithm get turned on and off by different parameters. And in the Gurobi team, we actually get to help by reviewing your model structure, finding bottlenecks in the solve, and then recommending the right combination of parameters to improve performance for your particular model structure. And all in all, the team of Gurobi experts is here to help you use Gurobi better.
Yeah, it is amazing to have a team that helps you optimize your optimization.
I like that.
And Scott, over to you.
All right, Vijay. Yeah, it's great to learn about everyone here on the panel. I'll share a little bit about myself. Academically, my background's kind of all over the map. You might say a mile wide and an inch and a half deep. Undergraduate degree in civil engineering, of which I've done none in my career. The Army, like Warren, I was in the Army, although I stayed in a few years longer, about 25, gave me the opportunity to go to graduate school a few times, get a master's in applied math and operations research, and then a PhD in management science and statistics. And after I retired from the Army, I landed in the South Bend, Indiana area at the University of Notre Dame, where I was a full-time faculty member for 6 years until I decided to make the switch back to industry. I'm currently at a sports analytics startup called SumerSports. That's kind of like summer, but only one M. SUMER, named for the Sumerians who invented a lot of the math that we use today. We're like a 40-person startup. We've been around for about a year and a half, and we are currently focused on helping professional football teams make better personnel decisions. We also have some fan content out there on our website that you might find interesting. Yeah, I said we're about 40 people, and I would say we're about 40% data scientists, 40% engineers, maybe 10% non-technical football experts, like our CEO, who used to be the GM for the Atlanta Falcons, actually, for over a decade. And then about 10% of us who have more of an operations research background. So as the director of research and development, I lead our optimization and simulation efforts. I manage our intern program. We had 3 this year, looking to grow that for next year. And then I'm also actually leading an effort to build some large language model based bots in the football space. So having a lot of fun at what I'm doing.
Excellent. Thanks to you all for those terrific introductions. I got a chance to talk to each of our panelists over the last week or so. So I'm going to ask each of them a couple of specific questions along the way, but this is a group with a lot of information to share. And so I know some of them will chime in on questions that weren't directly addressed to them as well. Dayana, let's start with you. I'm really, I feel like I've got a spoiler thing here. Can you tell us a little bit about how you landed up in your first job and what it was like to start your career and start a family at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely a formative time in my life. I graduated with my PhD with 2 daughters under the age of 2. So while I was doing my PhD, defending my dissertation, I had babies. So starting my family, and when I graduated with my PhD, I decided I was going to stay home for a little bit. So I decided I was going to take a little bit of a break. I was also working while doing my PhD. I was doing consulting work. So I left that consulting job, and I was gonna stay home, for a few years and see what happened. But I got a call weeks after I graduated from a headhunter looking for somebody to start operations research at Eastman Chemical. So it was a great opportunity for me. I reached out to my mentors, to my professors that I still kept in touch with, and I told them, hey, I was thinking of doing this, but it turns out that I have an opportunity. What do you think? And they all encouraged me, hey, it's a good opportunity, at least consider it. And I ended up going to work at Eastman Chemical and was there for 5 years, and it was a great experience. Definitely hard to do. So my advice is it's really get help from everybody, your partner. It's got to be a decision that you make together, because it's not something that my husband also works. He has a demanding job, and we've always both had demanding jobs, so it's a team effort. So definitely it does take 2, maybe more. It takes a village to get started in your career, get started with your family. But if you have the energy and the desire, it's definitely worth it.
Dayana, with 1 daughter, I'm exhausted just listening to your story. I can't imagine with 2. Thank you for sharing that.
I have
Scott,
another one. So I have 3 now.
Oh my gosh. So, Scott,
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about your military career. I'm interested in, when you came out of the service, how you went about evaluating kind of what's your right first job and what kinds of things were important to you at that stage.
Yeah, sure. By the way, my our girls were 6 and 3 when I finished my PhD, so I can relate to Dayana in that regard. Although my wife kind of definitely had primary responsibility for them while I was studying and then working. But to get to your question, Vijay, I guess the one thing I think about is that my goal at each point, at the end of each period of schooling or at each transition point in my life, like when I retired from the Army, was different than what it was, at the previous transition point. But each time it's kind of remained centered around this 9-word mantra that I picked up a few years ago. It's not a Scott Nestler original. I have to give Kelly Corrigan credit for this, but it's make yourself useful, doing something hard with good people. And that kind of describes what it is I want to do in my life, both professionally and personally. So, as someone who during his time in the military was what I would call a pracademic, and by that it's it's a portmanteau of practitioner and academic. So I would bounce back and forth between working for for the Army, say in military personnel, or what we might call talent analytics now, and then teaching at West Point or something like that. I knew that I wanted both types of activity, teaching and working on real world problems in whatever my next career was to be. Now, I settled on an academic role, or primarily an academic role at Notre Dame, but I did do some consulting on the side, mostly in optimization, actually. And then after 6 years, I flipped that to primarily working in industry with some adjunct teaching on the side, which I continue to do. And both of those work for me. One thing I would caution is that if you stay in maybe one of those for too long, it makes it more difficult to switch back to the other. So after 6 years in academia, I was ready for a move back to industry.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Warren, you talked a little bit about your thesis being in reinforcement learning around robotics, and then kind of doing future work in optimization. Can you tell us, when you talk to data scientists, folks on your team and within your organization and others, how do you talk to them about optimization?
Sure, that's a great point. As I said earlier, my first role was primarily building and solving mixed integer programming problems for what was at the time the world's largest fiber optic cable factory that we had here in northern Atlanta. So I saw firsthand how powerful optimization can be. So as I had gone from machine learning to a primarily optimization-based role, it was important for me to learn how to do that well. And of course, all of us on this call know how important optimization is, and that it's a great way to reduce costs, to help improve processes and make the best decisions possible. But I'll say not every data scientist knows that. The data scientists are typically going through a program that are taught more model-free methods like neural networks or clustering, with the idea that you take a lot of data and then you fit a model to it. Optimization, on the other hand, starts out with a model, and we directly input some of our knowledge of the process and of the system, and we generate some answers, and that's when we can determine whether our model is good enough, and therefore our answers are good enough. So I personally don't think that type of mathematical modeling is as common of a skill for incoming data scientists, but it's extremely important to have on the team. So my advice when I go to informs and I talk on panels is for these data scientists to set themselves apart by being able to do both. Take machine learning, use it to create some forecasts, to create some of those inputs that are uncertain into the optimization models, but then know how to build and run optimization models so you can take your answers to the next level.
Excellent. And my hope for our field and for data science more broadly is that we're increasingly looking and finding those types of connections. That's terrific. Alison, can you tell us a little bit about how optimization played into your first job out of graduate school?
Maybe taking one step back on that. How did I even find my first job? I kind of had three thoughts on what I wanted. I was kind of looking at salary and benefits, and that was certainly kind of high in my objective, kind of highly rated. I wanted to do interesting problems and really apply the skills that I had been working so hard to gain. I really feel that I kind of nailed it. I started at ExxonMobil with more than a healthy salary. I got to tackle wildly interesting technical problems as part of their real-time optimization team. And honestly, there's no better place to flex both my chemical engineering and my optimization muscles than a large energy company. And I actually had a lot of roles at ExxonMobil in optimization, a little bit in data science, and I actually even spent a few years on the ExxonMobil recruiting team. But I'll talk a little bit about my first project actually on the real-time optimization team, because I learned so much there. And it was actually a project that transitioned from an internship that I had with ExxonMobil as well. And it was not directly working on an optimization problem that's going to affect decisions or affect how valves are going to be set directly. So the real-time optimization team builds high-fidelity nonlinear models of the refinery. So this is part of downstream that basically takes crude oil and makes gasoline and diesel and a few other products. And there's a big model or a few big models of the refinery that really take the price of gasoline and diesel and other products and tries to set the temperatures and pressures of the refinery to make the best product mix. It does this every few hours. So it's really taking in live data, solving it, and sending those signals. But the challenge is, this was a surprise coming out of school, was not everyone just kind of accepts an optimal solution at face value. As Warren mentioned, you have to put some thought into how you're actually displaying this information and representing these results and passing it on to the user. And so my project was actually just to help explain the results. And we wound up using a lot of really sophisticated analytical techniques to try to kind of peek behind the curtain of why the optimizer is doing what it's doing. So with sensitivity analyses, what if scenarios, to first and foremost help that user understand why that solution is the optimal solution, particularly if it was non-intuitive. Help them kind of understand that so they can build trust in the solution so it can keep on, so you don't turn it off and you don't try to pinch in the limits to try to nudge it toward the solution that kind of makes the most sense to you. So I got to apply a lot of these techniques, and that kind of mindset of not just handing a solution over to the user was something that was really ingrained in me in that role. And this was a team that was, had optimization experts. We had chemical engineering experts. It was a really cool mixed team trying to, really understand, first and foremost, how to write the original RTO models, but also how to help explain them. I don't know, Dayana, did you have any challenges that you faced at Eastman Chemical along those lines of really trying to help explain those solutions to your users?
Oh gosh, I faced that in all the companies that I've worked for. At Eastman Chemical, here at Delta, I used to work at Disney Parks and Resorts, and I feel like it's the same story. It's very important to know the importance of making sure that the people that you're building models for are part of the journey that you're on, so that they feel that they have ownership over what you're building. So I learned that at Eastman Chemical, we can't just go away into our offices and build our cool models in a vacuum and then expect people to use them. It's a journey that they have to be a part of too. They have to feel ownership so that they can understand kind of, when they get results, where do they come from? The explainability is a big piece, right? And how do we make solutions that are explainable? How do we take that trade-off of explainability and optimality, right? Like, do we go with a simpler approach just because we can explain it? And that's a decision that I make every day. At Eastman Chemical, at Disney, at Delta, we might trade off some optimality just to have explainable solutions that we can implement. Because at the end of the day, a model that's nobody uses is no good, right? We have to make sure that our models are implemented and used by our clients.
You guys, that's terrific insights, and also kind of leads me really beautifully to the next question, because I know that explainability is a huge issue with sports teams and sports executives. Scott, do you have any advice for the person who's on this session live or asynchronously, who's got a passion for both sports and analytics, about kind of how they might go forward?
Yeah, you're right, Vijay. Explainability is important. to folks in sports. They're experts in their field. They're the subject matter experts. They, may or may not have a terribly quantitative background. Some do, don't get me wrong. But they have to, like Dayana and Alison mentioned, they have to be comfortable with, whatever solution methodology you're proposing or, trying to get them to use. In terms of how do you get involved in analytics and sports, it's you kind of got to put yourself out there, whether you're, an undergraduate student right now. There are a lot of, sports analytics wasn't a thing when I was an undergraduate student or even a graduate student, but it is now. There are a lot of clubs out there at universities and colleges where students can get involved and do analytic work for the teams at their school. So if your school has a club, join that club. If you're at a school that doesn't have one, or you graduated a few years ago and you're working in a field but would really like to be working in sports, find a way to do something, put it out there. And by put it out there, I mean, it could be write a blog, it could be compete in the NFL Big Data Bowl, join a team and spend some time learning, how do we use tracking data. There's now that's a whole complicated topic there. Using tracking data, one, because it's very large data, two, it's not always as clean as you might expect, of course, what data really is. But get hands-on, do something, write about it, present about it. There are conferences out there. The MIT Sloan one gets all the publicity and is the largest one, but my favorite sports analytics conference is actually at Carnegie Mellon University each fall, and it's very inexpensive for students to attend and participate either in person or virtually. So just start doing something, and what you'll find is that the community is very welcoming and helps. I mean, while it's competitive, it's also, we want to help develop people to get involved into our field. So just express interest, show what you can do. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you don't know what you need to do, but have an idea. And I think you'll find, keep at it, you'll find some success.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Warren, I'm going to jump over to you because, you've talked about your work at Lucent, UPS, and Best Buy, but you've also been at a startup company that grew in a really significant way over a sustained period of time. I'd love to get a perspective, advice that you've got for folks on how to evaluate opportunities within large companies versus smaller companies.
Sure. I want to stress that what I'm going to say here is my experience and my opinion. So I've worked at some of the biggest companies in each of these industries. I worked at Lucent Technologies for almost 6 years, UPS for almost 8, Home Depot for a year, and now at Best Buy. But I also spent about 10 years helping build an analytics and data science capability at a fintech startup here in Atlanta that we eventually took public. So I personally had success by starting at these several big companies first and then going to a smaller company later, because I learned quite a bit about how to solve problems at scale. So a couple of the observations that I had for big versus small companies is that at big companies, let's say UPS, that these large companies have problems of scale, so that optimization, finding an extra 1 or 2%, finding that best versus a good enough solution is a lot more. You have a lot more opportunities at the big companies to do that. So, but at a smaller company, on the other hand, what I found is that while I may not be making as big of an dollar impact as I was at a big company, I had a wider range of responsibilities, and I had a lot more freedom to do things that were either optimization or machine learning. And I guess the only constraint was really, we didn't, at some of the smaller companies, you don't have the budget for the expensive software. So you kind of have to bootstrap yourself, maybe with some open source, before you prove to the executives that buying some commercial software is the right way to go. So I think anyone is going to find good points and bad points about starting at either a big company or a small company. So I would just challenge everyone to acknowledge that no job is perfect. There will be constraints on what you can do. Figure out in that job what it is where you can make an impact, and do as Scott said, solve some hard problems and do some good things with good people. I didn't get that quite right, Scott. I'm gonna have to ask you for that quote a little bit later.
Yeah, that one's a good one. And what I liked about it is I already was starting to shuffle the words around to make it into a funny one in different ways. But Warren raises a really good point. In a large company, you may be part of a group that's very involved with optimization of very established existing processes, but you're likely to have peers in company and folks with similar backgrounds and similar interests. Dayana, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about what it was like to be the first OR hire within a group.
Yeah, that was definitely very great. It was a great experience for me. I grew a lot professionally. I had an opportunity, first of all, to come in and have it's a wealth of opportunities for OR, right? Like, everywhere you look, oh, I could work there, or I could work here. There's a problem here I can solve. So definitely keeps you interested. Your leaders probably don't know what you do on a day-to-day basis. So you have to constantly sell your work. You have to sell your value, which starting out your career and doing that is a great way to grow fast, right? Because you're starting to get into a little bit of a sales area. Maybe if you're not so good at communication, maybe it will test you into learning how to sell what you do. For me, what it did is it opened up a lot of doors. Being able to go in there, do the work, see the value, sell it. It got me a lunch meeting with the CEO of the company. It's like, well, I'd like to learn more about this thing, which is great. As a entry-level manager at a company, you just been there for like 2 to 3 years, getting to speak to the CEO is a big deal. And then eventually, we applied for the Edelman Award, which was great. Great way to continue to sell operations research within the company, starting to get the brand out there, for the company. And it's all, at the same time you're developing yourself, developing, the brand for the company, developing, your perspective of where you bring value. So definitely it grows you in a way you couldn't even imagine. We did get to be semi-finalists that year for the Edelman Award. We applied for, if you all are not familiar, the Edelman Award has to do with one project that brings a ton of value for the company. We're talking millions, billions, we're talking ending world hunger type of things. So we submitted for a supply chain, the supply chain of coal for Eastman Chemical, and how to mitigate risks within that supply chain. And that got us to be semi-finalists, which is great. Got to continue to sell the value within the company, and it's a great opportunity. I don't know if there's a lot of opportunities like that left nowadays, because I feel like everybody has jumped on the bandwagon for analytics and optimization and simulation and machine learning. So but if you do find that, wow, what a great way to kickstart your career, learn quickly, grow, and just your doors are going to open for you.
And one thing I'm observing, and it sort of connects with both Warren's response and Dayana's, this last one, I'm observing that as data science and analytics have become more mainstream, we're seeing more interest from earlier stage companies in experts, and that the components the different components of the data science portfolio are increasingly important to their competitive advantage. Alison, I want to kind of transition that concept over to you. You work, and you and your group work with so many people from data science and from optimization. I'd love to get kind of your observations about what sets people apart, the people that are most effective and most successful that your expert team interacts with.
One thing I certainly see is that the simple ask or the act of asking follow-up questions to get more understanding of, what are the details of this problem, or what is the background of the team that I'm working with, or what are the less technical but still important challenges that people might be facing. We've discussed a little bit about, getting buy-in and kind of internal selling, or maybe management of change. So those asking of follow-up questions is really important. And I think that's something that even during your guys' interviews, you can show. If you're asked a question, you can ask follow-ups. Make sure that you're understanding the point that they're trying to get at in that discussion. And, it's really easy to, once you ping on a keyword that you're excited about, to just kind of dump everything you know about that topic on the person because you love it and they love it or will love it. But if you take a step back and understand a little bit more about what they already know and about their knowledge base, you can kind of use their jargon. You can skip repeating parts that they already know, kind of forcing them to map what you're saying to what they already know. You can position benefits in a way that really aligns with the problems and pain points they might be having. And really, it gives you a better way to tailor your solution or your project or your answer to that person. And really, by getting to know the person and the team and the challenges they're facing, maybe you'll learn that they're already 90% there, and you really kind of need to just fill in this 10% knowledge gap or 10% technology gap that you can fill.
Thank you, Alison. That was very thoughtful and terrific. I'm going to throw a curveball at the panelists. This is a jump ball question open to any and all of you. What is the biggest mistake that you feel like you made early in your career, and the lesson that you took from it?
Oh, I can take this one. I left grad school with a very precise definition of what optimization was. It had a mathematical basis. And when I came into industry, the gift that I gave my colleagues was correcting their misuse of the word optimization, where optimization might mean I did some improvement here, maybe I solved for a variable, maybe I just made the best decision of a few choices that I had in front of me. And I, out of the goodness of my heart, would correct them. No, here is what optimization really means. And that's not really the way to go about it. That's not how you make friends in business. That's not even really correct. What they're saying is optimization to them. Maybe I have a more specific definition, but I would say, be open to using your colleagues' jargon in the way that they understand it, particularly if you're trying to teach them something or you're trying to kind of get some influence and buy-in with the folks around you.
Excellent. Anybody else want to share some classic and tragic and instructive mistakes in their career?
I'll do a real quick one. When I was at Lucent Technologies and doing the optimization, the first year, we made some significant impacts on both revenue and reducing setups and a lot of things that I assumed that the executives and everyone else would know about. And then I got to a performance review, and they said, "I don't really know what you do. I mean, what impact do you have?" And from that point on, I would run the optimization the old way or the new way, and I do some simulations. And the second year, I came in and blew them away with all the things that optimization had done for the company. But I just thought everybody knew, like at grad school, everybody knew how powerful optimization was, and I didn't need to go out and sell that to the non-technical users. But I learned that the hard way.
I'll add on to Warren's. comment there. I think, mine is similar. I think, more generally speaking, working really, really hard, thinking people are going to notice you sometimes doesn't go how you expect. Don't underestimate the value of building relationships, especially if you're working for big companies, of selling what you do, of talking to people about what you do, because that goes a very long way. It's a hard lesson to learn, but one we learn eventually.
Excellent. So next question, again, a jump ball for any of the panelists to chime in. What are the key factors or dimensions that you encourage people to think about when they think about their job search? And how much emphasis should they be putting on starting salary versus other factors from your perspective?
Yeah, hey, I can take this one. One of the things that speaks to me is it's a Japanese concept called ikigai. I don't know how many people have heard of it or not. It's this intersection of kind of four fundamental elements. I mean, in life generally, but it can be applied to the job search process. But these four things are, well, what do you love doing? What are you good at? And realize those two things aren't always the same. But also, what does the world need, and what can you get paid for? You got to kind of think of those four things and figure out what is at the intersection, the four-way intersection, ideally, of those, and aim at that. Now, that's maybe a little idealistic. We could think of that as an objective function in an optimization problem. But of course, life throws constraints at us, right? So just realize, there are trade-offs. I mean, if we were to simplify it a bit and say, okay, what do I want to do? Where do I want to live? And how much do I want to get paid? Well, you could probably pick any two of those, and then the third one is determined for you, kind of like the, fast, cheaper, good sort of analogy. But I don't know. That's the way I approach it. It's a trade-off. It is an optimization problem. There's an objective, but there are constraints as well.
Right. Hard and soft ones, right? Anybody else?
I would just add to that these are sequential decision-making problems. It's reinforcement learning, or your role to get that first job is to find something that satisfies as much of the constraints that you put onto it, but realize that you're going to learn some things from that job, and that's not the job you're going to have for the next 30 years. It might be, but if you don't like it, stay there for a year, put 3 or 4 things on your resume, and go find a better one. These are, I think a lot of times we put too much emphasis on, is this the best job? No, go out and find a good one. There are some jobs that I got that really, if they were stack ranked, I might not have chosen that as my top role, but I learned so much and got many opportunities out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add on, I think find something that you're passionate about. I mean, a company that you admire. I've been fortunate enough to work for my 2 favorite companies, Disney and Delta. They both start with a D. But I love the product. I love what they stand for, and so if you're passionate about something, you're happy to go into work every day and make a difference. So, find something you love, find something that you're passionate. And I think, to Warren's point, so important. My first job was in a chemical company. I had a blast. I was working supply chain problems, which I love. But yeah, I learned so much, and that kind of opened doors for me to go into, the entertainment industry, which, was a blast, and the perks are really good.
Yeah, Dayana, I think if I worked for Disney, I would go to the park every day.
Yeah, you would, and then you would get tired. It's like, it's too hot, or too many people, but yeah, it's great.
So this next question is also for all of our panelists, and it's going to lead to our first audience question. And So the question for all of you is your team hiring? And if so, what kinds of things do you pay the most attention to in terms of skill sets and levels? And how do candidates, from your perspective, differentiate themselves? So that's a mouthful. You can take on any and all parts of that question, any of you.
I'll say that we hire entry level or maybe a few years experienced data scientist, and we look for the technical skills we think are table stakes, but we're looking for some of those soft skills of being able to ask a lot of really great questions, understand the problem, know when good enough is good enough, things like that. Now, what I will say is that we may have a director level opening for someone with optimization and simulation. We're trying to add that some of that to our team probably over the next couple of months. It's not out on the site yet, but we will be adding something that would be relevant to this team, and being able to show experience doing either labor optimization or supply chain optimization or some of the standard problems that a retailer would have would go a long way.
Excellent. Anybody want to add or rebut?
I'm not hiring right now. That doesn't mean that there's not openings throughout Delta. I would say I typically am looking for PhDs, optimization, but I think there's some openings out there if if you want to just get in the door. If you search for analytics at Delta, you might find some. There's a lot of different analytic organizations within Delta. They might be hiring. It might be a trade-off if you really want to come work for the company. You might begin in a more of citizen analytic organization where you're doing more descriptive type of work. Very valuable to the company. Our leaders value that work. So maybe it's an entry into Delta, and then eventually you do end up in one of the more predictive prescriptive groups that we do have out here. So not hiring at this point, but definitely doesn't mean that we won't be hiring in a few months. You never know.
Excellent.
Yeah, so similarly, we don't have specific postings open right now for technical optimization roles. But you can always check the website as those open up, because they do open up throughout the year. And in terms of skill sets, we're looking for folks who have the technical chops on mixed integer optimization, things that Gurobi is good at, but also can help explain these things in digestible chunks to our users, to help educate them, whether it's through webinars or individual discussions, to be able to take kind of the tiny nuggets of information that we get from a customer and be able to understand what challenges they might be having and where Gurobi can help. So a lot in the technical space, but also in communication and kind of, as I mentioned before, the willingness to ask those follow-up questions and really understand what's going on.
Excellent.
As I had mentioned earlier, I'm at a startup right now with about 40 people. Now we've grown significantly over the year that I've been there, from about 15 to 40. So we've clearly done a bunch of hiring. Not currently actively hiring anyone, but starting the process for summer interns for next year. So keep that in mind. And we do bring in both undergraduate and graduate students as summer interns. So keep an eye on that. And who knows? We could have positions open out there as well. Again, just like I say, put yourself out there, show what you can do. The fact that you are in a good degree program or have earned a degree is, like Warren said, kind of the table stakes piece of it. But put a portfolio out there, show what you've done, compete in some contests. Those are the things that seem to get employers' attention.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else want to chime in on ways to differentiate yourself? I think the point that both Scott and Warren made is a really good one, which is your technical skills are important and valuable, but in some sense, a lot of that is table stakes, your degree. And I'm interested if any of you guys want to share anything else about how you might suggest candidates differentiate themselves.
I would say be able to explain the work that you do to someone who doesn't know anything about optimization. Assume that the person you're talking to is unfamiliar with your work and really help them not only understand a bit about the technical details, but why this is important and what the benefits are, and have like a good kind of pithy explanation of that, and really be able to answer the questions that might come up. And also, if you have any way to use optimization in your daily life, or build your portfolio, or, as Scott mentioned, do competitions, get some of those things where you're demonstrating, beyond my coursework or things like that, I'm really able to kind of assess a problem, build a model, and show those results.
Excellent. And that actually, Allison's last closing comment ties in with one of our audience questions that I want to throw out to the team. And that is, a lot of you have talked about demonstrating the value of optimization or of data science generally. Are there any particular techniques or approaches to really making that value visible and tangible that you followed that you might want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I can take that. I would say, as much as you can, try to give context to the solution. So one thing that's maybe kind of a mark against optimization in some people's mind is it gives you a single solution, but the model maybe has some forecasts or projections or maybe uncertainties somewhere in there. And so if you can give the context of those uncertainties, or maybe kind of a few what if scenarios of what if the price goes up or the price goes down in this particular product, or how would this have performed over time, or what if I relax this particular constraint, always try to give as much context as you can. I like to think of Google Maps in this context. It shows you your route, it shows you where the heavy traffic spots are, so what's ahead of you. It shows you the time, it shows you alternate routes. That's another really good one to kind of show. And that kind of helps you give a package that is more likely to be accepted, and then understand what the performance indicators are for that team. And it's not always the objective. So at ExxonMobil, the objective is to maximize profit. But the objective of the person that decides whether or not to turn on the to turn on the optimizer might be throughput through the refinery. And if a lot of times those are in line, you maximize throughput, you maximize profit, but sometimes those aren't in line. So make sure if there's a difference there in kind of someone's mental objective versus the objective of the model, and translate things accordingly, particularly if they differ.
Excellent. Anybody else want to chime in on this one?
I think Allison hit exactly what I was going to say. It's the not to assume, we should not assume that our optimization model is so accurate that the answer is exactly what they need. There's uncertainties. There are other things that we haven't taken into account. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But I think it's where we've seen success is when we sit side by side with the expert and say, look, because people have been making really good decisions without the optimization model. We need to show them why it's important for them to use that model. It's going to be fast. It's going to be hopefully more accurate and better answer. But you've got to prove to them that it's taken into account all of the edge cases that the human brain is taking into account. So your first, second, or third iteration of this model might do great in 80 or 90% of the cases, but you've got to satisfy that it's not going to send in on a really bad route in some edge case.
Yeah, I was about to start complaining about Google Maps taking me on 22 extra turns to save me 30 seconds, but I think we're all familiar with that one. One of the things that's come out of this discussion is just I get a sense of in number of different industries that you're all working in how much analytics and the use of models, optimization and otherwise is moving rapidly. And I'd be interested, based on audience question, for anybody that wants to share what your approach is to continuing to learn and what kinds of things you lean on and how you get information about emerging techniques, as well as more about optimization as we learn more about how to make these things work. So kind of the question from the audience was really, how do I continue learning on my own while I'm on the job about technical topics?
I'm going to plug in here to say join a professional organization. Both Scott and I, and probably others in this panel, are members of Informs. And I feel like that's a big part of how I approach my continuous learning, and just, having an opportunity to get together with your peers 2 to 3 times a year and see, okay, what are you looking at? What are you working on? Aside from everything else that a professional organization might offer in terms of continuous learning. And so definitely consider that if you're not already part of a professional organization.
Excellent. Anybody else real quick? Because we're about to head into our final question in just a second. So
I would
go ahead, Scott.
I would agree with what Dayana said. The other thing I would say is look at the backgrounds of my office and Warren's office. Not saying you have to buy all the books that we have, but do read. There's plenty available out there, at no cost in electronic forms and all. Do read recent publications. At our company, we have every other week on Friday a book club. It's really more of a paper club. We pick a paper from sports analytics and discuss it among the 8 or 12 of us that show up. You can do those sorts of things, wherever you are, whether you're a student or working in industry or even teaching.
excellent. So thanks to everybody for their insights kind of all throughout the last hour. My last question is once again a round robin, not a jump ball, a round robin. I'm going to call on each of you to answer one of 2 questions. Either what's the final piece of advice you'd give to somebody early in their career or who's searching for their first or early job in analytics and optimization? Or what do you think was missing from your academic journey that would have been helpful for preparing you for your industry career? So either final piece of advice for a new job hunter or something you felt was missing in your own training that you wish you would have known. And we'll start with Dayana because we started with her at the beginning as well.
Oh, yikes. I thought
Same,
you were
same
gonna
one.
I mean, have fun. I mean, this is gonna be the rest of your life. Take your time. Be critical about what you want and don't want. Do some introspection and know what you're passionate about. I think, that to me is that would be my advice to all of you. Really take your time, because this is a big part of what you do every day. So, and have fun. You have to have fun.
Excellent. Next over to, I believe Scott. Scott was next last time. No, I'm sorry. We stayed in Atlanta. It was Warren.
All right, so I'll go. Mine is networking. Dayana already talked about it. My preference for networking started with Informs. Then I served as chair of the Career Center Committee, and now I'm on the board of directors. It's a great organization, but really it's the networking. The networking got me my first few roles, and just being able to bounce problems off of people. That's super important.
Excellent. And Alison, you're next. We moved via Best Buy to Minnesota.
Yep. I would say, Dayana mentioned to take time and be critical about what you want. And I think that's really good advice. One way to kind of figure out if a particular company fits that, I found reaching out to someone who might be my peer at that company, maybe even before I apply or during the application process, That might even mean uncomfortable, cold LinkedIn connections, or trying to find a mutual connection to introduce you. But get to know what their day is like. You know, do they enjoy having lunch with their colleagues? You know, do they leave at a reasonable time? Are they excited about the work that they're doing? But reach out to the potential you at that company to understand if this is really what you want and it kind of matches what you've done for self-reflection about what you would like.
Excellent. Thank you. And Scott, you've got the last word.
Yeah, I'll keep this short because I know we're coming up on time. I would say be curious and show that you are curious. Show that there are questions you want to know the answers to, and that you have the skills to go find the data, maybe build a model, or come up with another way to answer your questions. But demonstrate curiosity. That always pays off.
Fantastic. Well, I want to give a big thanks to all of our panelists for their sharing their time and their insights and their experiences. Lindsay, back over to you.
Thank you, Vijay, and thank you again to all the panelists and the attendees today. It's been such a rich discussion, and we hope that all the attendees are leaving with a better sense of the career paths, job search, and roles in optimization today. We've got a great day of content coming up, so stay with us. We've got sessions from top faculty and overviews of new free educational resources. So thank you again, and enjoy our academic tailored Gurobi Days Digital.
Bye, everybody.